A couple of international reports released recently on the status of democracy in India has got people talking. An independent research institute, V-Dem, recently released a report which said that India is an electoral autocracy. Another report released by the American non-profit organization Freedom House describes India as partly free. So are these reports telling the truth? Or is this a manipulated fake narrative on India by vested interests? Let's find out.
Well, I have a little bit problem with all these Freedom House and these kind of institutions. When it happens in their own country with the black population, when it happens discrimination against women, so many issues are there, but they don't want to assess their own countries and they start raising fingers. When it comes to our country, when it comes to, and I'm not trying to be unnecessarily a nationalist, but I'm certainly a rational political scientist and I'm a PhD in political science from Jawaharlal Nehru University. And I do see there are problems and issues in terms of minority communities, in terms of a lot of exclusion. There are problems in terms of Islamophobia. But to say that India is not a democracy, I don't think by and large the statement I agree with.
Democratic institutions can only be analyzed by similar democratic institutions. Mere NGOs neither have the capacity nor the capability to go ahead and comment upon the democratic values of the biggest democracy in the world. Having said that, we have to be understanding also the fact that there's a historical policy vacuum that's existing in India. At the time when we talk, India does not have any dedicated law on cybersecurity, nor does it have any dedicated law on privacy, nor on data protection.
Before we take these reports seriously, it is important for us to understand the methodology that was used to conduct these studies and also take a look at the funders of these reports. But one thing most of us can be certain about is, as far as India is concerned, democratic values are definitely being overshadowed by polarization and divisive politics.
I don't think India is in the 10 most autocratic countries in the world. There are dictatorships I can count offhand, I can count 20, 30 which are must worse in India, but that's nothing to make us proud of. We are losing our democratic setup, and why we are becoming autocratic is because there is less democracy, there is less dissent, we don't listen to other people, we are not tolerant to the other point of view.
The international reports on the democracy situation in India, however factual or fictitious it may be, they have only skimmed the surface. The problems facing the world's largest democracy are deeper than that.
Constitution institutionalized the concept of freedom, democracy, liberty, but unfortunately we have not followed it up with the governance system that will ensure democracy and freedom.
Democracy is a lifeline of the Indian nation. India stands for democracy. It is the biggest democracy in the world. It may not be the most perfect democracy. And the constitution makers never envisaged a perfect democracy. They envisaged that substantial compliance with the parameters of democracy need to be done. And till such time, India has not done anything which is going ahead and obliterating or removing the vision of the founding fathers of the constitution. I think India is on course.
It is difficult to have a dialogue on democracy in India without discussing electoral politics and elections. Questions have time and again been raised on the reliability of the electronic voting machines or the EVMs in India. How foolproof are our elections? Can the EVMs be tampered with? Can it be hacked? Not many have definitive answers.
See, I was very active in government in emergency, 1975. I was the district magistrate and district collector of Chandigarh. That time, in spite of emergency, the election was held free and fair. And Congress and Indira Gandhi, Sanjay Gandhi, everybody was lost very badly. Now the elections are fraudulent. EVM is a fraudulent machine, let me tell you. We have done deep studies. So 3 fundamental principles when I go for voting. I must see with my own eyes, I must have knowledge in my own brain that my voting is recorded as cast. Cast as intended. I must see it with my own eyes. My own eyes, I must know. Yes, I have cast as intended. Second principle is recorded as cast. I must be satisfied. The vote has been recorded as I have intended. Okay. Third is counted as recorded. Counted as recorded. Okay. I must have personal knowledge. Now in ballot paper, all the three were available. In EVM, it is all inside a machine. EVM may be one of the best machines in the world. Indian EVMs are unfit for democratic election.
While the debate on the reliability of the EVMs may not have any outcome, the fact is, democracy is our first and last resort. It is our last refuge, and we must go all out to protect it. We cannot afford to be less democratic or have a partial democracy. As someone had rightly put it, the cure for the evils of democracy is more democracy.
The founding fathers of the Republic chose democracy as the most suitable form of government for India, because India is a country of tremendous diversity and it's a very complex kind of country. Here, any kind of autocratic setup, will not suit, will not work, and that is why the great foresight, the founding fathers chose the democratic system and parliamentary system of government.
In a functioning democracy, you have a government and you also have a powerful opposition. You also have powerful institutions. But what's happening in India is like we have a government that's very powerful and that is authoritarian and with the unquestioned leader at the helm and all. But we don't have a robust opposition. Of course, we have regional parties that control power in certain parts of the country, but we do not have a national opposition to reckon with. It's a great tragedy. That makes the ruling government potentially reckless, and this is step one for how democracies die, when there is very weak opposition, and we are in that stage, unfortunately, and nobody can contest it.
In the colonial days, people were called subjects. Once we became free, particularly of the constitution, we became citizens. So there's an ocean of difference between subjects and citizens. As subject, you are supposed to be obedient to the government. As citizens, you are supposed to give orders to the government. Government must take orders from the people, citizens.
Indian democracy has undergone a sea change. It has seen turbulent phases. It has experienced much churning. As they say, democracy is never complete. It is always incomplete. It is forever in the making and is founded in possibilities. But with the present chain of events that the country is seeing in terms of polarization and divisive politics, our democracy is more and more being endangered.
India's democracy has gone through many phases of turbulence also. For example, during emergency, when we were the students of Jawaharlal Nehru University, we were put behind the bar, we could not write, nobody could speak. During emergency, it was really all the democratic rights and freedom of speech was taken away from people. Under the Jayaprakash Narayan's leadership, the country mobilized to come back to the full democracy, and democratic rights were restored. 77 new government was formed. So we've seen that turbulence period, and this period again, of course, there are a lot of surveillance systems which are very objectionable, especially targeting journalists and suppressing the voices of people through social media attacks, trolling. This is something which is very unfortunate when it is happening. But again, I would go back to my argument about democracy and democratization and democratic process. I don't think India is faltering in that. But certainly there is ruling dispensation which is at the moment trying to curtail, control voices of independent voices and voices of especially criticism. Criticism has been seen as international, and that's not at all acceptable.
The emergency imposed on the people of India, where the hallmark of the whole exercise was muzzling of the press. So that had happened at that time, and nobody wanted to make that mistake of directly clamping down on individual and media liberties. So they've taken a new position in which you try to influence using your power that's at your disposal to control individuals through the organizations that they work with, and also through the use of various agencies that you control as the federal government.
The problem confronting our country today is the practice of institutionalizing majoritarianism by the powers that be. In a country like India, which prides itself in being one of the most religiously and ethnically diverse nations in the world, formalizing majoritarianism may be suicidal.
The set of people who have captured power now in the center for the last 7-8 years, and in many states, they don't believe in freedom. They did not fight for freedom at all. They don't believe in democracy. They didn't fight for democracy. They don't believe in constitution. They did not fight for constitution. So how do you expect democracy to survive?
There is another element to the whole exercise, which is majoritarianism, which is marked by greater obsession towards religion and to divide and see people based on their faith. So it's something that the government should not deny, because the government is run by a party that believes and whose election manifestos and their agenda, their statements of the leaders, everything points to a certain preference towards the majority religion of this country.
It is not just religion. Our institutions are collapsing. Our media is being muzzled. The very concept of freedom, free speech, and liberty is being seen as revolt. We may not be an autocratic nation yet, but being less democratic means the citizens not having the power to keep the government in check. When the citizens and institutions lose this power, we will be reduced to a failed democracy.
Where I feel bad is when institutions, like the Judiciary, the Election Commission, and so many the CBC, now we have the police and the enforcement agencies not working independently. A Chief Justice has retired recently and said there's nothing wrong in a judge being pro-government. I have a great difference point of view from his, because I feel a judge has to be pro-constitution and nothing else.
We also see the institutions getting weakened because the government in power is filling these institutions with yes men. And even if you look at the two houses of parliament, in the Lok Sabha you have a speaker who is a government appointee who appear to be constantly trying to appease or please the leaders in power, and with no respect for the institution or the seat of power that he is occupying. And then as a result, what do we make of it? That there is no institutional memory. There is a lack of memory about how powerful an institution should be.
The Pegasus scandal exposed how easily a government can spy on its citizens. This trend is not limited to India, but when it happens in India, one can't stop but ask how democratic is the world's largest democracy.
In the Pegasus case, the government has been in denial in public, but secretly and privately they've tried to justify it, saying this is something that we have done as Indians since the time of Chanakya. But they are mistaken, because Chanakya never got caught. There is this famous song from the 80s, Every Breath You Take, We'll Be Watching You, by the band called Police, in which Sting was lead vocalist. So it's that kind of scenario that we are facing at the moment, and I think it's a sad state of affairs.
Government spying on the citizens is a very bad practice, and that should not be done. Well, the point is that here, even if a government does that, now the Supreme Court of India is looking into it. That means the Supreme Court is very much alive to this and very much aware of the dangers involved in that.
The first step towards protecting and preserving our democracy is to preserve the sanctity of our institutions and our fourth estate. This is particularly important for India, as democracy is not an option or a choice for us. It is a critical prerequisite.
I agree that the privacy of the citizen should not be invaded by the government, at least without thought. And but even Pegasus is a sub judice matter. I will not comment on it. There was Pegasus before the committee, and from what I hear, only 4 people gave their phones to the committee. Thousands of people said that their phones have been installed with spyware Pegasus, but when the committee asked them to come forward, nobody comes forward. So you can't have it both ways.
Media is all purchased now. Media is completely purchased. Except some social media like people like you and some other media are coming out with a voice. Otherwise the mainstream media doesn't even talk. They are suppressed. They are completely enslaved. So the question is, democracy is not only important, it is extremely critical for vast majority, 80-90% of the people.
Even the press they don't now analyze or deal with facts. Most of the press either is anti-government or pro-government, or why can't you be anti-government but still praise the government when there is a right thing done by the government? Or you may be pro-government, but if you find that the government is doing something wrong, you still criticize that. I don't know why we are becoming so aligned to policies, to politics in fields where we should be aligned to truth. Truth is, our national motto is Satyam Jayate. And I'm sorry that is not happening in any field.
How does one test a democracy? In a reactionary political and media landscape, perhaps nurturing tolerance is the best way forward. As someone so rightly put it, the highest result of education is tolerance, and the highest test of democracy is the freedom of criticism.
If there is no democracy, then what will happen to this country? This country cannot be ruled by an autocrat. It's not possible. A country like India, with such diversity, with so many religions and so many languages and so many ethnic groups and all that, cannot survive as a unified nation if you move away from secularism and to democracy.
We have a huge development challenge. Our poverty indicators are not becoming better. Our gender discrimination indicators are not improving. So within the country, we have to do much more first to become a robust system, more developed economy. So let's forget about I'm sure that today's leadership is very worried about global image, but I would say that let's do national improvement first. Let's develop our country first. Let's set our house in order. Then we'll certainly get global respect.
We need to have a holistic, inclusive approach where perspectives from all directions need to find place under the same roof. In fact, we are the nation which is guided by the vision of Mahatma Gandhi, who said that I want the windows on all the 4 walls of my home to be open so that the winds from all the 4 directions can come in and their fragrance can go ahead and inform the environment of my home.
We must listen to the other side. You see, we are becoming a very intolerant nation. I'm not talking only of the government. As a people, I find that even in drawing room conversations, the minute it becomes political, tempers rise phenomenally. I don't know why tempers should rise. Each one could have a different point of view. You may not agree with what I say. I may not agree with what you say. But why should, there be a fight between the two of us? That is something which really worries me. One is the country where the government is quelling dissent, and that is also dangerous. But the other is when we as citizens, as human beings, even when sitting in a family, we are becoming less and less tolerant of each other's point of view. And that really worries me, because that, what society does today, the government is going to do even harsher methods too.